What's up guys, Justin here with the SketchUpExtensions.com. So in today's video, I'm going to give you an overview of every single Fredo6 extension and what they can do. Let's go ahead and just jump into it. All right, and so Fredo's extensions are hosted on SKETCHUCATION. You're going to need a free SKETCHUCATION login in order to do that, but it shouldn't cost you anything in order to do that. Some of them have a cost associated with them, some of them don't. We'll talk about that for each individual extension. Note that I will be linking to both the extension as well as some tutorials for the extensions in the notes below the video. All right, so let's start with LibFredo. LibFredo is an extension that basically contains a bunch of script files that the other extensions reference. So like Animator and ThruPaint and Curviloft, all of these kind of reference back to LibFredo. So while this might not be something that adds a bunch of features that we can see, it's really important that you download and install this if you're going to use Fredo's other extensions. LibFredo is available for free through SKETCHUCATION. All right, so Curviloft is a tool that's designed to create skins inside of SketchUp. So it's got three different modes. It's got loft by spline, loft along path, and skin contours. Each one of these creates a different kind of skin. So you can use this to select objects and then generate a skin based on those objects. Now this can do some interesting things if you switch between different shapes. So something like this, notice how it's going to adjust between the different shape types that we have in here and kind of try to interpolate skin. So you can do a ton of stuff like this. For the second option, which is to loft along a path, it's going to allow you to dictate multiple different shapes and the path along which they're lofted. So notice how I can use this to generate a shape that goes from a circle to an octagon right here really quickly. And then the one that I use the most is the skin option right here. So the skin contours option allows you to select a surface, right? Like this. And then once you get that closed surface, it's going to generate a skin across that surface. So I could also select this whole thing and generate a skin, and notice how then it's going to build a skin around the outside. So if you're doing organic modeling, Curviloft is a great tool for that. So Animator is a free extension from Fredo6 that allows you to generate moving animations of objects in SketchUp. So this is something you can't do with the base SketchUp toolset, but basically what this does is this lets you apply different kinds of animations to your objects. So you can add movement, you can add rotation, as well as camera movements, other things like that. So this gets you closer to being able to create true moving animations from SketchUp. So if you're looking for something to create animations, Animator is a great tool for that. I have a full playlist on Animator videos that I will link to in the notes down below if you want to learn how to use the tool to create animations. All right, so Curvizard is a tool set designed to help you do different things with groups of edges. So it really contours and curves is what it's designed for. It has a number of things in here like make curves and weld them and explode curves, but the ones that I use the most are the simplify contours and smooth contours. So a perpetual license to Curvizard is $12, or it's included inside of the Fredo6 bundle. And so what this can do is this can take contours, and let's say you brought in a bunch of edges like this. This has 129 edges. What this can do is this can simplify those contours into a lower number of segments. So if you get like a giant CAD file or something like that, you can use this to simplify based on the angles that are in the curves. And then when you're done, we've gone from 129 segments to 42 segments. So you can use this to simplify those complex CAD files. You've also got an option in here to smooth contours. And so what that's going to do is that's going to take your contours, and notice how you can use this and set an angle. So maybe I set this to like 15 degrees or something like this. This can create a smoother curve with more points from the more clunky line that's over here. All right, so Bezier Spline is a curve creation tool set for SketchUp that allows you to create different kinds of curves. So these are all editable. I believe this one is free. It doesn't actually have an information page on SKETCHUCATION, so it just has this page right here. The more info takes you to a forum post. I think Bezier Spline is still free. I'm not sure because Fredo's kind of transitioned over to FredoSpline, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But this tool allows you to basically create different kinds of polylines and other things like that. All very helpful curves to be able to create. One thing that's great about these curves is you can right click on them and there's an option here to edit them, meaning that they're editable and changeable after the fact. So notice how I can move the different points around. This should work on, I think, all of the different curve types that are in here, but you can definitely make those changes and those adjustments in here. So notice how this one, for example, is maintaining and updating that curve on our polyline like this. So a bunch of different kinds of curves contained inside of this extension. Like I said, I think this one is still available for free, but I'm not sure. So you're probably just going to have to jump on SKETCHUCATION and download it and see if it works for you. Fredo's kind of transitioned over to FredoSpline, which is definitely a better tool, but it is also a paid tool. All right, so while we're here, let's talk about FredoSpline. So FredoSpline is Fredo's updated curve creation tool. This one has a perpetual license that's $25. I think it's only sold as a standalone, but this one is a curve creation tool set that has a lot more options and a lot more control. So one of the things I really like about this one is I can lock my plane. So for example, notice how if I come in here and I create this curve like this, it's actually locking the plane in. So there's also different picking styles and other things like that. And notice how there's a bunch of different options in the drop downs for different kinds of curves that you can create. So this one just has a better user interface, and honestly, it just feels like a better tool to me. But like I said, it is definitely a paid tool. So for some people, that's going to be a bigger deal than for others. Personally, I think for adding curve creation functionality in here, it's totally worth it. But like I said, that's up to you. Note that these are all editable. So if I go to FredoSpline, I can edit it, I can swap it, I can make a bunch of different adjustments. So I can come in here and I can adjust like these different points. You can adjust, I think, the segment count as well. So let's say we wanted to bring this up, we could adjust the segment count to like 45 or something like that for an overall circle. So you can adjust all of that within this tool itself. So if you are looking for a curve creation tool for SketchUp, this is probably the one I would recommend the most at the moment. Okay, so sometimes you have models inside of SketchUp that can negatively affect your performance, whether having to do with the geometry or the textures that are in here. FredoGhost is a toolset designed to help you automate the process of swapping those out for proxies. So the way that it works is you can click on the option right here for the studio, and then there's a number of different kinds of proxies you can create. So you can have this have different colors or other things like that. In this case, we're just going to go with the bounding box. And so what the bounding box is going to do is it's going to replace your object with this lightweight proxy. So if I click on the Make Ghost button, what that's going to do is that's going to swap this out with a bounding box right here. And then I can just click on the green button in order to swap this back in like this. So I can quickly toggle between the real and the ghost versions of this object just by clicking the left or right buttons. So this also has options in here. If you have something with like a heavy texture, you could swap this to like a grayscale or something like that if you decided that you wanted to do that. So something that's going to make this lighter from a texturing standpoint. And then again, you're just going to be able to toggle back and forth between them with the red and green buttons. So this is really great for automating that proxy process. You can also use this to create like a wireframe that doesn't have any faces, it only has edges, which is also going to work a lot faster in SketchUp. So FredoGhost has a perpetual license and it costs $20. So there is a free version of FredoGhost floating around out there called Ghost Components. It definitely does not have the same user interface that FredoGhost does. FredoGhost is a much better tool, but you can use it to swap between different proxy models or other things like that. So if you are looking for a version of this but don't want the paid version, GhostComp is still floating around out there, but it definitely has a much less robust user interface and it's a little bit harder to use. So having the ability to bevel edges can be really important in SketchUp, and you don't necessarily want to do this manually, right? So you could come in here and draw a curve, then you could use the push-pull tool in order to kind of bevel this off to create a curved edge right here. But it's a lot easier to just use one of Fredo's extensions for rounding off corners. So first off, RoundCorner is a tool that you can use in order to select different edges in order to round them or bevel them off. So you can select different edges like this. You can set things like your offset. So if I was to adjust this to like 2 feet or something like that, and then click, notice what it's going to do is it's going to round everything off. So this also has the ability to create edge bevels. So if I was to click on this edge right here using the sharp corner function, notice how I can use that in order to create sharp corners inside of SketchUp. And you can adjust the number of segments that does as well. So let's say I wanted this to be maybe 3 segments. I can click in here and it's going to create this face with 3 segments. So RoundCorner is a great tool for rounding off edges. It is either $12 by itself, or it's included inside of Fredo's bundle. However, Fredo also has another tool for rounding and beveling edges called FredoCorner. And so FredoCorner is an improved version of RoundCorner. And one of the big things that FredoCorner can do that RoundCorner can't is it can actually apply to groups. So notice how this box right here is grouped and RoundCorner isn't going to work. However, I can use FredoCorner. So if I set my offset right here to something like 2 feet, notice how that's going to adjust like this, and it's going to be able to apply everything to the whole group. This also allows you to do live changes if you decide that you want to do that. So if I look at this, for example, and I click in here and I click on preview mode, what that's going to do is that's going to let me actually see what this is going to look like with my offset like this. So FredoCorner also has some other things, like for example, you can set different profiles. So instead of having a circle, you could do like a Bezier or something like that. And then you can adjust things about the curve using the select function right here. So notice how that significantly changed the way that this looks. So FredoCorner is a more powerful version of this. It's also got some other tools in here, like for example, subdivision. So it could take this whole mesh and it could subdivide it like this. And the whole point of this is notice how it split this up into quads. Well, now I can take this object and I can use an extension like sub-D or something like that. So if you're looking for the upgraded version of RoundCorner, FredoCorner is going to be a good fit for you. This one is a standalone. It's not contained inside of a bundle and it's $25. All right, so FredoGuides is a tool set for working with guides inside of SketchUp. So it's basically got a couple different tools in here in order to do different things. So you can click on the button right here in order to protect different guides. So if you have some guides that you want to keep, like no matter what you can do is you can select all of these options and you can click on the option for protect selection. And so when I do that, now if I try to delete out or erase guides inside of SketchUp, so if I go to delete guides right here, notice how the ones that I had protected stay in while the other ones get deleted. So you can use this in order to protect those guides like this. And you can also change the stipple of those. So if you want them to look different than the other guides, you can select a different stipple. Notice how then you can see which ones are protected just like this. And then if you want to unlock those, you can click on the unprotect button. There's also an option in here for quickly changing the color of your guides. So if you want your guides to be like red or something like that, you can click on this option right here and guides are going to show up as a different color. You can also hide or show guides using this button right here. So FredoGuides is a free extension for SketchUp. Okay, so FredoScale is one of my absolute favorite extensions, and what it does is it adds a number of different scaling tools to SketchUp. So for example, it allows you to do things like creating tapers with boxes. So you can use this in order to add and adjust tapers to objects like this. And then you get into some of the more fun ones like the twisting. So the box twist, for example, allows you to take an object, twist it like this, which can be really cool for some more complex objects. You can also adjust the number of splits or the number of cuts that this makes across your object to make this smoother. So you've also got a tool in here for radial bending, which lets you take an object and bend it along a radius like this. So if I click in here, and then I type in a value 180 degrees, that's going to bend this object along a radius at 180 degrees. There's other tools in here as well. And so one other tool that I find massively helpful is the box stretching tool. Because right now, if you use the regular scale tool in something like this cabinet, it's going to distort all of your trim that's on here. But if I use the box stretching function, what that's going to do, as long as I select the correct direction like this, is I can click and drag this over, and this is going to allow me to scale from a central point. So when I do that, notice how I'm not getting any deformation in here. And if you want to scale in 2 directions, you can drag this and you can right click the option for from opposite point and select the option for from center. Then this is going to allow you to scale in 2 different directions like this. So FredoScale can be bought individually for $12 or as a part of the Fredo6 bundle. Okay, so FredoPortrait is a tool designed to help you work with cameras as well as views and images from your SketchUp models. So it has some camera management tools that you can use in order to save different camera views really quickly. So it's got a little bit more functionality than the regular SketchUp Scene Manager. So you can use it to do this. One of the things that you can do with this is you can save this custom camera location, not only at the model level, but also at the SketchUp level, meaning that you can transfer camera locations across different models. So you can also use it to quickly generate image files from your SketchUp model. So if you want images of a certain location or something like that, so you can use it to quickly generate images not only of your whole model, but also if you select individual objects in here, this will help you export images of just those. So one other really cool thing about this one is it's got the option to generate a 2D component from your view right here. And so you can select different contouring like this. So this will actually come in here and try to cut this object out. But now if I click on Generate 2D Component, and it's going to take a minute to do this, but notice what it does is it takes an image of this object and then it generates it as a Face Me component right here. So you can use this to really quickly create Face Me components of objects inside of SketchUp, which I think is probably the most powerful feature, at least for me, inside of this tool. So you can get FredoPortrait for $20. Okay, so additional plugin folders is a tool set that allows you to define additional plugin folders in SketchUp. So most of the time, I don't necessarily recommend this. I recommend that you keep all of your plugins in one place. And so this can be helpful if you want to like dictate a location for plugins being shared on a network, or if there's restrictions to your system folder or other things like that, you can use this in order to set those additional directories. As a general user, I don't necessarily recommend this, but there are cases where this could be extremely helpful. Okay, so FredoTools is a free collection of tools for SketchUp that do a ton of different things. So if I click on the option right here, notice how there's a bunch of different options in here for different tools that are contained inside of here. This may be a standalone video all by itself. So like Draw Along, for example, is like a line tool, but it's an improved line tool where you can do things like lock things to a plane. Right, so if I draw with this tool right here, what that's going to do is that's going to allow me to lock to a plane so that nothing gets off of the plane. There's a ton of other stuff in there as well. You've also got tools like Curvishear. So Curvishear is going to allow you to take a curve and shear it upward. So let's say I wanted this to shear up by like 5 feet or something like that. I'm going to click on OK. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow you to generate like a ramp in here. You could then use something like Curviloft in order to add faces in here. So you've also got an improved divide tool. So if you click on this option right here, use divide edges, that's going to give you the ability to mark your division edges, which is really helpful. You can also set the number of divisions right here. So it's basically a divide tool with some additional functions. So another one that I really love and I use a lot for, and I've used before for actually my job as an estimator, is there's a tool in here for report on areas. What that's going to do is that's going to generate a report for the areas of all of the materials that you have selected. So notice how I can use this in order to split up by layer, by container, by material, but then I can also see the number of faces and the square feet, or if you use metric, you can switch to that. But you can use this in order to see a report of all of the areas inside your model. You can also see the front materials and the back materials like this, and you can export to a CSV file. So just a massive tool set from Fredo inside of FredoTools. You can download and use this one for free. All right, so Hide All Edges is a free tool from Fredo that does exactly what it sounds like. It allows you to select something, and then, so if you go to extensions, hide all edges, it will hide all of the edges in your current selection. So you can use this across multiple different objects like this. So if I click on hide all edges with all of these, for example, it'll do that. You could also use it if you want to like double click on a face and then another face. You could run hide all edges and it would just hide the edges that were in this selection itself. Note that this only works for unhiding edges. It does not work for unsoftening or unsmoothing edges. Okay, so Lord of the Toolbars is a tool set that's designed to help you manage and create different toolbars inside of SketchUp. So especially if you use a lot of extensions, it can get a little bit hard to manage. If you've ever seen people's screens that have like 16 rows of extensions at the top of the page, you can see that that's definitely not the most organized way to do things. Well, what Lord of the Toolbars does is it allows you to create your own custom toolbars. So let's say, for example, I wanted to put a bunch of Fredo's tools in here. I could create a custom toolbar down below, and notice what this does is this allows me to add different tools to that toolbar. This one didn't update because I need to restart SketchUp for them to show up, but you can use this to create custom toolbars down below with any tools in them that you want. You can name them whatever you want to name them. You can also use this to toggle your toolbars on and off, or you can also create favorites. And so I can either create favorites or I can manage the favorites that I've created. But basically what this tool set allows you to do is this allows you to drag tools in here that are then going to show up at the top of the page. So I can click on this button right here. My favorites are going to show up just like this. So the other cool function that I really like about this is you've got the ability to search for tools. So for example, if I want to do enable joint push pull or something like that, I could just search for it and then find it from this toolbar right here. So if you are looking for a way to manage all of your different extensions and your different toolbars, this could be a great fit. Okay, so MoveAlignMe is a free tool designed to help you move and align objects with surfaces and other things inside of SketchUp. And so this has tools for both manually placing objects or the one that I use a lot, which is the move and glue function. So when I use the move and glue function, what this is going to do is this is going to find that surface and it's going to glue to that surface. Notice how I can tap the arrow keys in order to force things to go along that surface. And so the object axis direction is really going to drive a bunch of this. And so we want to make sure that the red direction is facing back and then the blue direction is facing up and down. But then we can use this in order to glue it to the surface like this. Notice how I can tap the arrow keys in order to set the orientation on which this is going to be placed. But then I can click and notice how it's aligned this with this surface really easily. So you can also use the manual mode to do this. So one cool function about this tool is you can also use it to align objects to curves. So if I click right here, right, and then I mouse over this, and again, notice how I'm tapping the arrow keys in order to set this orientation, that this is actually following along with that curve orientation. So if you want this to be like perpendicular to something like this, you can tap the arrow keys and then mouse over it in order to do that. Well, now if I wanted to like extrude along this edge or something like that, that would be really easy to do. So I could just edit the component, click right here, and you could use this to extrude. So you can use this in order to align objects with other objects in SketchUp. All right, so MrHide is a free toolbar that basically allows you to toggle some of the things that don't have their own toolbars in SketchUp. So this one doesn't necessarily add new functions as much as it helps you find functions that are already there. So for example, it's got functions in here to like view hidden geometry or toggle that hidden geometry back off. It gives you the ability to toggle your profiles. You can turn guides on and off, dimensions on and off, other things like that. You can also toggle things like your shadows with this tool as well. So if you do have trouble remembering where all these functions are, like some of these live in your styles, some of them live in different toolbars, other things like that. So you can toggle like edge color by axis, other things like that. If you have trouble remembering where any of that is, you can use this toolbar in order to do that. I don't personally use it because I know where all of this stuff lives, but if you do have trouble remembering some of these things and where they go, this could be a good toolbar for giving you access to that. All right, so once you try to start working on surfaces or other things like that, it can be a little bit clunky inside of SketchUp. Like you can't, for example, just draw an arc across this face without doing some kind of like funky things to make sure everything's lining up. However, Tools on Surface is a tool set that allows you to do just that. It's a tool set for being able to create shapes that go on surfaces. So notice how I can, for example, use this to create a rectangle on this surface right here. And notice what it's doing is it's actually drawing it on this surface and it's actually splitting it up. So this is really powerful because it then gives you the ability to take your geometry and start, like let's say I wanted to create a hole or something like that. I can use this tool in order to create a circle on this surface like this. Notice how, again, this is split up as a separate object right here. So in addition to that particular tool, and I'm just going to undo back out of this, there's also tools like the offset on surface. So I love the offset on surface because it allows you to take all of the edges of a surface like this and offset them so that you can split out this shape. So you can get Tools on Surface for $12, or it's contained inside of the Fredo6 bundle. One of the reasons that I'm a big advocate of the bundle is because of the next tool that we're going to look at called Joint Push Pull. Okay, so what Joint Push Pull does is it allows you to push pull curved surfaces. So if you've ever tried to extrude a surface like this one with the push pull tool, you get this message that says can't push pull curved or smooth surfaces, right? Well, this is a tool that Fredo6 wrote that actually can. So notice how, for example, I can use this to push-pull back or forward on surfaces like this. So you can actually use this to push-pull curved surfaces. So if I was to jump back to this sphere for a second and pick up some of the hidden geometry, I could pick up some of these faces like this, then I could push-pull them outward. So you can actually use this to push-pull curved surfaces inside of SketchUp. This is really powerful for a lot of different things, right? Adding recesses, other things like that. That's really easy to do, but there's also a number of other tools in here that let you do other cool things. So for example, there's also a tool in here called Vector Push-Pull. What that does is it lets you push-pull in a direction. And there's a function right here, and I want to make sure that I've only selected this surface, but there's a function in here that lets me project the shape on a plane. So I can push-pull this in the Z direction like this, and I can use this in order to create a solid object from this surface right here. So vector push-pull is very powerful. It's also a lot of fun. So let's say that we were to jump on this object right here and just pick up a couple of these surfaces. I could use vector push-pull to push-pull this outward on the y-axis like this, and it would push-pull these out and flatten them right here. So you can also use the normal push-pull in order to do a couple different interesting things. So what normal push-pull is going to do is it's going to push-pull in a direction. But when I select normal push-pull and I do this, I can select this function over here for random push-pull, and this is going to allow me to randomly push-pull a surface like this. There's also a function in here if I want to select all of these, do a normal push-pull, and then also taper them. So let's say I did have that randomization, pushed it this way, then I can also toggle taper on, and I could turn that randomization off if I wanted to as well, but you can use this in order to taper different edges as well. So joint push-pull is a very powerful extension for working with multiple faces at once in SketchUp. Joint push-pull is also $12 or a part of the Fredo6 bundle. And again, this is another reason why I'm a massive fan of just getting that bundle. So Souvenir is a utility plugin that's basically designed to do a few different things. Souvenir is available for free on SKETCHUCATION, and what it does is have tools. It has tools like the ability to recall your last SketchUp model that you had open. So it'll keep track of that. It'll also keep the history of SketchUp models that you've had open recently. So see how I can kind of click back and forth between those and see them in a list. The more models you've had while Souvenir was running, the more are going to show up in this list. So it's also got a task list. So if there's things you need to do, like for example, reduce size of windows, reduce number of doors, whatever, you can come in here and you can check those and you can mark them as complete or not. So you can use this as a checklist of things to do. And so that one is going to be for your current model. You can also have an overall task list that'll open up across different models. So this one would open up anywhere, while this one is going to be local to your model. There's also a button right here that opens up your different plugin folders. So you can see how my plugin folder is right here, and I don't have multiple plugin folders, but if you do, they're going to show up in this list. And then finally, you've also got the ability to save favorites. So for example, say that you have like a folder that you go to a lot, you can save that in here, and you can use it to open up a folder. Or like if you go to SKETCHUCATION's plugin store a lot, you can save that URL in here, and then you can use that to access websites quickly and other things like that. All right, so ThruPaint is an extension that up until recently was contained in FredoTools, but it's now its own separate extension. It's currently free, at least through the 1st of February 2023, and then we'll see what happens. So ThruPaint is a tool that's designed to help you with mapping of materials inside of SketchUp. So notice how, for example, if I take this and apply a material with ThruPaint to this surface, it fixes the mapping of the object so that it fits on this surface properly. It has multiple different UV modes that can set the way that materials are placed on surfaces. It works for multiple different kinds of surfaces. And the cool thing is not only does it allow you to do your different kinds of projection mapping in here, like this, you can also move, rotate, and scale. So you can use this to edit materials on complex surfaces really easily in a way that without this extension, you haven't really had in SketchUp previously. All right, so SUClock is a free extension that helps you track your effective time inside of SketchUp. Basically, it's a tool you can use to track the amount of time you're spending modeling inside of your SketchUp model. So basically what it does is it tracks the amount of time that you're using different tools, as well as some other statistics about those different things. Now, one thing I'm not clear on, because I haven't used this one a whole lot, I'm not clear if it tracks your idle time, meaning time when you're not actually doing anything, and then it tracks your effective time, which is the time that you're actually modeling and using tools separately, or if it only tracks the effective time. I think it's only the effective time, so I don't think you could like hit play on this and use it to track like billable hours or anything like that. I'm not 100% sure, so if you've used this tool, let me know in the comments down below. But if you are looking for something to kind of track your usage and that kind of thing, this could be a good tool for that. All right, so a lot of people know that sandbox tools inside of SketchUp has the ability to create meshes from contours, but the resulting geometry isn't necessarily always that clean because it's made out of tries. Well, TopoShaper from Fredo6 gives you the ability to create those meshes, but it does it using quads. So if I use the Generate Mesh button right here, in order to generate a mesh from this surface, I can calculate the terrain. And what this will do is this will actually use a quad mesh inside of SketchUp in order to create a mesh with quads right here. And you've also got the ability to set how it handles the ups and downs between different points. You can also set it if it's going to create a skirt underneath like this. But if you generate your terrain and then look at the hidden geometry on this one as opposed to the hidden geometry on this one, you can see how it's much cleaner. It's a much smoother looking mesh, and it just gives you a better result. So in addition, it also allows you to create a surface using points in addition to contours. So if you have a number of points you want to create a terrain from them, this has a tool built in to do this. So TopoShaper is contained inside of the Fredo6 bundle for $40, or you can get the perpetual license for $12. VisuHole is a tool that's designed to both cut openings as well as emboss on surfaces. So the way that it works is you set a stencil, and then you can use that stencil in order to cut a hole in an object in SketchUp. So you can set any kind of stencil that you want. Like for example, let's say that I had a pentagon right here, and I was to activate this tool. I can pick that as a stencil shape, and I can set whatever I want the base point to be. But notice how now I can use that in order to cut openings inside of SketchUp. So you can also use VisuHole to do things like embossing on surfaces like this. So if I take this text, for example, scale it down, and then we want to select this surface first, then I select it as a stencil like this. I want to set emboss, and I want to make sure that it follows the surface. Notice I can set the direction in here. It'll emboss this on the surface. Now I will note when you're using the emboss or carve functions, you probably want to save first just to make sure that things are doing what you want them to do. There's also different options in here for the way that this drills through different surfaces. Or if you just want to carve into a surface. So for example, let's say that I was to create a couple edges right here, and then I'm going to put them in a group like this. I could set this to carve into the surface by a value of like an inch right here. And again, you have to make sure that the object that you want to carve into is selected before you run this. But you can use this to carve into surfaces with shapes as well. So if you're looking for a free hole cutting tool, this could be a good fit. So I will link to a playlist on this page of tutorials for Fredo6 extensions, as well as individual tutorials in the notes down below. Leave a comment below. Let me know what your favorite Fredo extension is. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.